I would do different things like put my water in the glass jar and sit it on my rooftop and let it go through a cycle of the sun and a cycle of the moon, before I drink it. Because your sun, you get your vitamins. Some people stargaze. I've done it a couple of times. You don't look to the sun like you're worshiping it, but it's good to stargaze because that's where you get your vitamins from. You're getting vitamins from the sun that they ain't even made yet. You know. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Junior Bervine, and I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm a producer and also a musician. I play piano. That's pretty much how I make my living. Yeah, so pretty much music has pretty much been a part of my life since I think I was in my mother's womb. That's the only way that I can explain it. I came out of my mother's womb and was pretty much into music as far back as I can remember, whether that was singing, dancing. My mother had a lot of jazz albums and listened to a lot of different kinds of music, so she was very instrumental, but she doesn't probably even know, into my musicality. And growing up, I remember learning how to break dance and pop lock and whatever was music. I went to church, I looked at the choir and saw people singing. I wanted to be down there also, I remember that feeling, that feeling that way, me feeling that way anyway. And then later on, after beating on the piano for, learning little tunes here and there from different people, my parents saw that I took it seriously, When I went to go move with my dad, though, he pretty much got me lessons, and after high school, I went to a music college. Well, I went to a community college, but they had a music program in there. And I never thought, though, that I would be doing music full time, That wasn't in my mindset, but I just love music, So that was the thing for me. My mom brought me up on like Ahmed Jamal and Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea and Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, like all the 70s. I think that's why that's my favorite era of music, for the most part, And then for the most part, after college, started playing in some community choirs, meeting different people. I consider myself a late bloomer. So, got in touch with the right people, and they pretty much took me in, from Anthony to Clinton to Tony Moore to James Poyser to Victor Duplay to Questlove. They all pretty much took me in. And I tried to remain very humble and very hungry. And I think the people saw that in me, And my first Kevin Arthur, Brian Fraser Moore, those are some good brothers, man. For the most part, back in the day, everybody was like, each one teach one. And that was the mentality that I came up in. Because that's what was done for me, so that's why I try to give back, So my first production experience, my first road experience was me playing for a gospel play called Talk Show Live and Mr. Right Now, which was by David E. Talbert. And Brian and Kevin Arthur called me up for that. And that was my first professional gig, And then after that, I got called back for the next one. And at this time, I was able to actually musical direct the play. And it just seems like everything just kept falling in line, like gig after gig. You know, once I quit my job, everything fell right in line, you know. After one thing got done, somebody else called me for another thing. So while I was out on the road during those early years, around like 99 to like 2001, I would also go in the studio, but I didn't know how to work any DAW, any DAW, you know, I didn't know how to work any program. So I would go in there and they would just let me sit in there and learn how to work the programs. And I would just play with people who knew how to work with the programs. And I would just play, not thinking of I'm creating a song. I wasn't thinking like, oh, you know, I'm gonna get this track placed. That wasn't my mindset. I just like to play. In the midst of me doing that in the studio, I was able to get songs placed. But at the same time, I wasn't able there to finish the songs because I was working on the road. So those things kind of happened simultaneously at the same time. So first thing that I think I played on, Jaguar Wright, Same Shit, Different Day. Then after that was Music Soul Child, You're My Girl. You know, those first two songs, I wasn't there to finish them. But I remember being in the studio like, yo, I got this beat up, just come play something over it, or, you know, play this sample or whatever. So that's what I did, you know, but I was able to get my credit. You know, Access Music Group was the first production company that I started out with, James Poyser, Victor Duplay, Chauncey Billups. And then after that, you know, Vivian Green, Anthony Hamilton. And then while that's happening, I'm still working on the road. So it's kind of like, I could talk about the production thing, I could talk about the playing thing, but they was kind of happening simultaneously, you know? And there was a lot going on. Philly was really thriving at that time. You had Music Soul Child, Jill Scott, Glenn Lewis, you know? It was a lot of things going on, a lot of places to play. And everybody just learning and playing together in one big community, you know. The 5 Spot, Wilhelmina's, you know, big music communities where everybody came out to, Bilal Oliver, you know, Jeff Bradshaw, you know. We all started out there at that spot at Wilhelmina's, you know. But through my experiences of playing and learning, you know, I started to get into other different avenues of things, of music that I didn't consider myself ready to play for, you know? So every time I went into a situation, I was always nervous and like, you know, a little scared by, like, my mental was messed up. But at the same time, my mental wasn't messed up so much to where I wasn't able to pass, because I never got fired from a gig. So I guess that's a good thing. You know, so my experiences are always, the way I give back is I tell the young cats about the physical and the mental aspects of playing music and of working for people. You know, when you're playing, just because you're a musician doesn't mean you can produce. So I had to learn the production thing also, and I had great mentors when it came to that, you know. And at the same time, my uncle Megahertz was also doing his thing, you know, Busta Rhymes and P. Diddy and all these, Nas, you know, so there's a lot going on during the time, you know. So my creative process, whether when I'm doing music, whether in the studio or playing, there's a couple of different things that I'm thinking about. When I'm in the studio and I'm creating a song, I am pretty much, let me go back, let me take a step back. Because first is playing, because that's what I learned how to do first. When I'm playing from my heart, number one. And through my experiences, music stems from the heart before it goes down to paper, and before, you know, people can read what you felt in your heart. You know, music always stems from the heart. So I put a lot of my heart and everything into what I'm playing. And then also there's learning different styles of how to play, so that also encompasses a different mindset. But for the most part, I try to make everything that I play feel good. That's something that I've learned growing up that nobody had to teach me how to do, but I learned from watching my peers and watching others who did it very well. Less is more. When it comes to playing, sometimes you don't have to show everything you know. Discipline. So for the most part, the mental part of my playing stems from confidence, timing, versatility, and what's the other one? Timing, discipline, timing, versatility. Because I use those aspects mainly when I'm out on the road. Because when I'm playing for another artist, I have to play their music the way that they like it to be played. So being a musician, sometimes you want to do a lot of different things. You want to do what you want to do, but when you're playing for somebody, you can't do that. So I try to make the music feel as close to the record as possible. And if the person wants nuances, then I'll give them some nuances, And I feel like as long as you go with your heart, it won't steer you wrong most of the time, especially when it comes to music. Sometimes I remember at one point when I first, got high, smoking weed or whatever, that was a different thing, like I feel like I could play anything and do everything, but it did have a sense in the music where it was a spiritual thing, because, you hear it differently and you might play it differently, but yeah, for the most part, my inspiration and everything that I play and do stems from my heart. So right around like 99, 2000, I was, started really, everything started coming together really. There was a lot of things going on. I was working with Common, working with Jill Scott, and I was working with this French group called Les Nubians from France, from Paris. And this is like right after the play. So after the gospel plays was Les Nubians. And then after Les Nubians was Common. And then in between them times I was rehearsing with Jill Scott, couldn't go out and do the tour because I got a call to go out with D'Angelo. Now, this is like in the beginning, so I am nervous as Jax. I am nervous as Jax because I have to go up there to rehearse. Now, mind you, I did have a good, my mentor, James Poyser, is the one who called me for the gig, so I did have a pretty good sponsor, if you will, to say like this guy can do it, but I still had to audition. And I had to audition on organ, and I am not an organist. So it was a bunch of different organists up there, like, cats who play organ in church and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just nervous. So I'm just like, man, I don't know if I'm going to get this gig, because I walk in the room, you got Pino Palladino, Questlove, Anthony Hamilton. Like, it was pretty much an all-star band. Spanky. Who else was in there? Frank Lacey. It was a heavy hitting band, and I did not feel like I belonged there, only because of how nervous I was. I felt like I was not ready. Anyway, I did the audition, and because of me knowing what I know, that less is more, they gave me that, I got the gig. But I can remember being very, very, very nervous, like, walking in there. Because whenever you play for an artist who was a musician and they play your instrument, and you know what I mean? You can't fake the funk with them. And they didn't use Pro Tools. They didn't use, no, you couldn't hide behind that stuff. Everything was live, you know? So I got the gig. I was doing rehearsals with D'Angelo. That went good, you know, went very well. That was probably the best tour I've ever done in my life. Musically, hands down, you know, it was the best tour I've ever done in my life. Best band I ever played for in my life. The music was like really inspiring. And I took that feel back and that whole mentality back to my little church choir, Jehovah's Chosen. Well, not little church choir, but you know, my choir. And it just changed my whole mentality when it came to music. The next time I can remember feeling nervous was when I got a call to do Brian Mcknight. Now, Brian Mcknight happened after D'Angelo. I remember we did a show. It was D'Angelo and Brian Mcknight. And we closed that show. We was all on the same card. And we closed the show. D'Angelo closed the show. And we destroyed their band. D'Angelo's band was all about kill and destroy. You know, that's the mentality that they had. So by the time, like, you know, and then his show was like 2.5, almost 3 hours sometimes. So it was like a party, you know? But because of that D'Angelo gig, I got the call to do Brian Mcknight. I knew in advance, for like a week or two, that I was going to be doing it, so I'm in my basement rehearsing. And mind you, both of these artists, Brian Mcknight and D'Angelo, are both keyboard players, but their styles are totally different. And here it is, I got the call for Brian Mcknight because of the D'Angelo gig, but the style is totally different. So both churchy, but just one was modern, one was quartet. All right, so we get to the rehearsal and the keyboards are not programmed correctly and they don't even have all the keyboards there in the rehearsal. So the way that the keyboards are set up, the MIDI was set up was I hit one keyboard and all of the keyboards change. So you got to kind of know where your place is at on the keyboards, because you can have one keyboard which can have 4 different sounds on it. It could be bells up here, strings down here, something else down here, and you have to cover those parts. And it was my first time working with in-ears. You know, 4-piece band with, you know, heavy orchestrated music coming through the computer. So, and then I had to lip sing. So, mind you, the first rehearsal with Brian Mcknight didn't go too well in the sense of all the equipment wasn't there. So now it's the day of the first gig. I am backstage while Tyrese is on, trying to make sure I got all the sounds and know where everything is at, because my tech is helping me out. God bless his heart, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I'd have been able to pull that off. So we're back there trying to get stuff together right before I go on the stage. So that was probably like my most nervousness, because I'm dealing with a click track, and in this click track, I got counts that I have to abide by, because I'm starting the song off by myself a lot of times and ending the song off by myself without the band a lot of times. And it's a different style, so that was very nerve-wracking. But I feel like it's always good to be a little nervous. A little nervous is just not bad, you know, because that means you still care. You're not treating the gig like anything. When you're a little nervous, you're going to give your best and you're going to give your all. So, but I still had confidence, you know, and I was able to pull the gig off, and I did the gig perfectly fine. You know, once you get past that first gig, it's always like, okay, you know, that was cool, you know. I was a little nervous, and it was nerve-wracking, but I made it through. I was able to breathe, you know. But those being nervous and having no confidence is one of those things that taught me early in those different experiences with D'Angelo and Brian Mcknight, you know. Yeah. When I was in college, I did not care about music enough to where I was able to think that I would be able to make a living at it. So I was like, man, I'd probably be, and I think wanted to be a nurse. Only because I didn't really want to help people. I just wanted to find a good job, you know, The nurse was it. The doctor, nah, that's a little too hard. It's a little too long in school and too hard. Maybe I could just be a little nurse, a little male nurse, if you will, you know? But that was my mindset then. But then once I stepped out on faith, I quit my job and I decided to do music full time. I haven't worked another 9 to 5 in years, in almost 20 years. Probably except for when I went to Egypt, I had a 9 to 5. But other than that, yeah. So I know that I mentioned Egypt. I know people like Egypt. Yes, I lived in Cairo, Egypt for 5 years. Towards the end, like 2008, 2009, after living the quote unquote rock star life, you know, I lived the church life, I lived the rock star life, you know, and I always wanted to know the truth. And it was brung to me through my cousin, my brother / cousin. You know, that's one of your cousins who's so close to you, he's like your brother. You know, so it was brought to me by him. And it was all biblical. Everything in it that he was saying, we was just going through the verses. But I knew that I had to be obedient, you know, because just because you hear it doesn't mean you're going to be obedient. But it sounded right to me. And I started to study the Bible for myself, you know. And I think that changed my perspective on the music industry. It changed my perspective on America. So you know, was like, man, I need to get out. I want to leave and you know, raise my kids in a different environment, and knowing the truth and knowing prophecy. This, you know, this is not a good place. All right, so I moved. Being over there was different, but I think that through my experiences of traveling the world, I was able to adapt. You know, over there, they don't really have a sense of space or a concept of space. So people are like really like closed in. Somebody can be standing real close to you. Even the way they drive in the cars, making your own lanes. But over there, that was my first experience of real freedom. Being over there was my first experience of real freedom, man. Like, you don't have to worry about no cops pulling you over. You don't have to worry about stoplights. You know, drive any way you want, you know. But for sometimes I think you need things in place because of people who lack common sense. So a lot of things that happen over there is because people don't have common sense because there's no law. So, you know, the law is important, but I think that for me, it was my first time experiencing freedom and not having to worry about all the things you have to worry about here, driving and, you know, and the people there are real nice, but you know, you have some buttholes and you have good people everywhere you go. But for the most part, my experiences there have been very nice. You know, for me, it was hard being there because, in the beginning, because I didn't know nobody. And I still love to play music. So I had to like start from the ground up again, you know. I quit for rock. At the time when I went to go to Egypt, I was a musical director for Pharrell Williams. And I left, you know. I left the whole thing and was really like studying the Bible very heavily. Found out who I am, you know what I mean, where I'm from, you know, who my forefathers are. And I found out a lot of different things that really changed my perspective and my mindset. So when I got over there was a lot of brothers like-minded who lived over there. And it seemed like Egypt, man, like especially like New Cairo was like waiting for a mass exodus because they have nothing but like apartment buildings with nobody living in them. And like new apartment buildings, it was like new neighborhoods are springing up, nobody's moving in, like they was waiting for us to come over there. So once I got over there and found out the lay of the land and, you know, the rules and what to do's and what not to do, and started meeting some people, you know, and then I was able to start playing in different areas over there, traveling up and down the Red Sea. Me and my wife was singing. I was playing, we had several different bands, and then also I was teaching over there. You know, I was teaching music and PE. So, you know, my experiences over there, I wouldn't take them back for the world, man. You know, honestly speaking, my plan was not to come back here. It wasn't. Once I went over there, I was over there to stay. You know, so the Most High had another plan. So my inspiration, you know, definitely traveling can be an inspiration to keep me inspired to do music. But for the most part, listening to old records, you know, the 70s, like I said, the 70s is my favorite era. And I used to have a CD case this thick with all kinds of discographies in them. And those things kept me inspired for the most part. I remember one time in Egypt, I had my window open or whatever, and it was nighttime. And I was just looking at the moon without, you know, I don't even think I was even aware that I was doing it. But my manager was like, yo, you was looking at the moon and you just started killing. You know, but I wasn't even really aware of it. But, you know, over there, the skyline is different. The moon seems like it's closer. The sun seems closer. It's just weird. The skyline over there is different. It's like biblical skyline, if you will, you know? So I think a lot of different things can give me inspiration. But for the most part, just making music feel good is my inspiration, you know? But inspiration can come from anywhere. Movies, you know, something that I have inside me, like a melody. My kids, you know, traveling definitely. My experiences, you know. And then, you know, sometimes I may go on hearing other musicians play also can be, you know, could be inspiring, you know. Especially if I hear somebody really, really, really killing, then I know that the music is not dead, that there's still hope because they're taking music out of the schools and, you know, and kids are just like beating on, saying they're producing, just beating on the pad and don't know how to play an instrument, you know. So when I see a killer musician, you know, who's doing it all and like, you know, really feeling the music, you know, that's inspiring, you know. So like my favorite record albums, you know, like back in the day when my mom raised, you know, pretty much raised me from baby to like 12, maybe like 9, 10, 11. You know, she had a lot of records, man, like a lot of jazz records, a lot of, and I just remember some of the artwork from them, like Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder was one that I remember back in the day. There was a Bob James record that had a football on the front of it. I'm not sure if that's Taxi. I'm not sure if that's a Taxi album, but I remember this Bob James record that had a football on the front, on the cover of it. And then there was, see, what other one? What other album covers do I remember? Oh, you had Bob James Part 1, where there was a lion on the front of there. I really like that one, you know, because it was just like it was just all black, but then it was like a golden lion face. That was dope. I remember that one. Yeah, Bob James 1, 2, and 3 records were pretty dope and very simple. You know, simple.
And you can even, if you want, you can even go 80s, 90s too. Like you don't even.
Okay.
If you right, if you got it.
Let me see. I mean, I'm sure that I'm missing some. I'm sure that I'm missing some because there's a lot of dope album covers out.
Do you have a favorite? I got it any era, any era.
Do I have a favorite?
Biggie, Pac, you know what I'm saying? Jazz.
Favorite record? Dang. I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't know if I have a favorite. you know, I don't even think I even thought about like, yo, I love that album art. I have, you know what I mean? It hasn't even like, and I'm sure that I have seen something. I was like, yo, that's dope, you know. But I didn't, you know, not far back to where I can remember, you know, yeah. So first thing, there's 3 different things that you can do to, if you want to learn how to play piano. The first thing you must do is get yourself a handing book, and that will pretty much, you know, take care of your fingering and get your finger and build your fingers up strong enough to be able to execute the notes. And you want to do it slow. You want to have and also you want to have a metronome so that way your timing can be on point when you're doing those things. And then another thing is you want to learn some theory. You know, you don't have to learn how to read all of the charts, but you want to know some theory for yourself so that you know what you're doing. You know, like I am not a good chart reader, but I do know enough theory to be able to tell you, you know, like what kind of chords I'm playing, chord progressions and things of that matter, just to understand the music, you know. And if you're good at math, you can be good at music. So like when it comes to like, you know, things that keep me sane and, you know, meditation is a good thing. So, you know, I like to work out, and I used to work out a lot, you know. I picked up like 40 pounds of muscle when I was in Egypt, and that kind of kept me sane with everyday life. And then I would like, you know, do different things like put my my water in a glass jar and sit it on my rooftop and let it go through a cycle of the sun and a cycle of the moon, you know, before I drink it. Because, you know, your sun, you get your vitamins, you know. Some people stargaze. I've done it a couple of times. You know, you don't look to the sun like you're worshiping it, but it's good to stargaze because that's where you get your vitamins from. You getting vitamins from the sun that they ain't even made yet, you know. So all of those things are connection to your pineal gland, which is your spiritual access to the Most High. Inside of your pineal gland, there's waters and crystals. And what happens is throughout time and throughout bad dieting, the water in there in your pineal gland becomes calcified and becomes hard. So it doesn't, when you're younger, you know, it's fully active, but we're not really taught how to use it. You know, so to decalcify your pineal gland, you need to eat healthy, work out, gaze at the sun, meditate. You know, those are the things that pretty much make it, the water in there, you know, not as hard. And when you meditate, you can have an out-of-body experience, you know? When you meditate, that's why Christ talks about meditation. And certain people meditate is to kind of have, what do they call it? To be aware of what you're dreaming about, to be able to control that, you know? But the pretty much the New Testament pretty much talks about being in the Spirit and walking in the Spirit. And when you're talking about walking in the Spirit and being spiritual, people don't even know. Everybody has one, a pineal gland, and that is your spiritual connection to the Most High. Is what I found out, you know. And that's why I did the things that I did. Put my water in the sun, stargaze. I mean, not stargazing, but sun gazing every once in the blue moon. You know, to try to decalcify. You know, changing my diet. Those things decalcify your pineal gland. You know, meditation. I mean, this one, you know, this can go, what I'm about to say can apply for anybody in any work that you do. This is my advice. Always stay hungry and always stay humble. Show humility. That goes a long way. That's my advice to whatever, you know, whatever you're doing in life. That would be my advice to you. Stay hungry and humble. Peace.